Welcome back to Fluent English, the podcast. I'm Georgia. Think in English.
And I'm Willem R. Today's episode is really exciting.
Welcome back to The Deep Dive, the show dedicated to giving you the fastest shortcut to being truly well-informed.
Hello, everyone.
Today, we are tackling a silent frustration, really. It's
Yeah.
a universal experience that I know has plagued almost every single person trying to master a new language.
Oh, absolutely.
You know who you are.
It's that feeling of a total mental blockage. You spend years studying English. You can read. You can understand complex documents.
You can watch movies without subtitles, even.
Exactly. You might even be thinking in English for most of your day. But then the moment comes. The moment you're asked to speak.
In a meeting or even just ordering a coffee.
And it all just vanishes.
Yeah.
The words are gone. It's a complete and an instantaneous freeze.
That terrifying gap, that chasm between understanding and actually speaking, that is exactly what we're focusing on today.
It is.
We look through the research you shared, this remarkable blend of, psycholinguistics and language acquisition data, and the core finding is, well, it's truly transformative. It completely reframes the struggle.
And that's the mission for this deep dive, isn't it? To really isolate and dismantle this silent barrier that blocks natural fluency.
Right.
And what the evidence overwhelmingly points to is this. The problem is almost never the language itself.
That's so counterintuitive.
It is. The real enemy, the thing we need to confront, is a profound, insidious psychological block we are simply calling fear.
Okay, let's unpack this immediately, because this moves the conversation away from studying vocabulary lists and grammar charts and puts it squarely in the territory of mind management. This is the core paradox, then. You have the linguistic tools, you know the words, but your psychology is actively preventing you from using them.
That's the key distinction. If you are struggling with fluency, your first instinct is to assume a linguistic deficit.
I don't know enough words, or I need to review the passive voice again.
Yes, exactly that. But if the understanding is there, if you can process information quickly, the language is fundamentally adequate. The problem is one of deployment.
So we need to focus on the mindset, not the mouth, to solve this.
Precisely.
So we are staging an intervention for our internal critic. We need to understand why the brain views speaking a second language as such a threat that it triggers this freeze response.
Yes.
So let's start there. Let's define that response and really get to the source of this fear.
Okay, so we begin with what we call the notorious freeze phenomenon.
Right.
Picture the scenario. You're in a high-stakes conversation. Maybe you're presenting to a new client.
A situation with some pressure.
A lot of pressure.
Yeah.
You are fluent enough to communicate. You know you are. Yet when it's your turn to speak, your cognitive system just seizes up.
The words are there. You can hear them in your head.
You can hear the perfect sentence in your internal monologue, but the physical mechanism for speech production, it shuts down entirely.
So it's not a vocabulary deficit. It's a failure of the relay system.
That's a great way to put it.
It's like the electricity is running perfectly, but the circuit breaker has been tripped right at the last second. What is the fundamental mechanism that drives this short circuit?
The mechanism is fear. And specifically, it's the manifestation of the fight-or-flight response, but in a social context. The sources are very clear on this. They emphasize that this barrier is psychological, not linguistic. Your brain isn't assessing the grammatical complexity of your sentence.
It's assessing social risk.
It is assessing social risk.
That is fascinating. I have to ask then, how does a simple mistake, say in the conditional tense, register in the brain as a threat severe enough to trigger something so primal like freeze?
Because the brain prioritizes survival above all else.
Yeah.
In modern society, survival isn't about escaping a tiger anymore.
Right.
It's about maintaining your social status, avoiding humiliation.
Okay, so a linguistic mistake gets registered as a social failure.
Exactly. And the brain interprets that as a potential threat to your standing or your reputation. That sudden fear floods the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for, complex decision-making and articulation, with stress hormones.
And that cognitive load just trips the circuit.
It trips the circuit, it leads to the freeze.
So the brain's immediate calculation is it is safer, it is less risky to say nothing at all than to risk saying something incorrectly.
Yes, silence is protection.
And this is why just studying more grammar doesn't help. It only arms the system that the fear is already blocking.
Exactly right. You end up with this huge gap between your competence, what you know, and your performance, what you can actually produce under pressure.
So to overcome this, we have to confront the sources of the fear directly.
We do. And the research pinpointed 3 primary manifestations. 3 core fears that act as perpetual roadblocks for learners all over the world.
Okay, let's define this terrifying trio, because I think recognizing them is the absolute first step toward neutralizing them.
The first is the fear of being judged. This is that pervasive anxiety that every listener is an active critic, just waiting with a mental red pen to grade your effort.
Okay, number 1, what's the second?
The second is the fear of being laughed at. This is tied to public humiliation, where an accent, a mispronunciation, or one wrong word might turn you into
The subject of a joke or an embarrassing story later.
Yes. And finally, the third is the fear of sounding wrong. This one is fueled by the internal perfectionist,
The inner critic.
the inner critic. It's the trap that dictates that anything you say must be grammatically flawless and complex, otherwise silence is better.
And I imagine these 3, when they're all working together, create this formidable psychological fortress that keeps fluency locked out.
That's a perfect description. A fortress.
Right, let's start with the big one then. The fear judgment. It really is the number 1 killer of communication flow, isn't it?
It really is.
When you are speaking, it truly feels like you are under a microscope and every single syllable is being weighed and measured.
It feels incredibly real. But the deep dive into the data here offers a massive, liberating counter-insight.
Okay.
It's the reality check we all need. In most everyday conversations, nobody is thinking about you that much.
That's a powerful realization. It sounds a bit harsh maybe, but it's the truth that can set you free.
It is.
If they aren't actively critiquing my past perfect tense, what are they actually doing?
They're preoccupied.
Yeah.
As human beings, we are the central figures in our own stories. Your listener is wrestling with their own priorities,
Yeah.
their meeting agenda,
Yeah.
what they're having for dinner, or perhaps their own anxiety about how they're going to articulate their next thought clearly.
So the cognitive energy required to run a live, detailed grammar critique on me while also trying to have their own conversation, it's just too high.
It's simply too high. It's not happening.
So we can view that intense feeling of being judged as an internal projection then, not an external reality.
Exactly.
The spotlight that we feel is aimed at us is actually generated by our own self-criticism.
Precisely. And the research highlights an even more positive truth. When people notice you are speaking a second language, the immediate human response is often admiration, not criticism.
That's a wonderful point.
The effort involved in communicating across linguistic borders.
Right.
It's viewed as high value and commendable. People respect it.
So maybe this is where we need to introduce a different metric. Instead of us measuring our grammatical accuracy, the listener is often measuring our courage and our effort.
That's absolutely right. The listener values the attempt over perfection.
Right.
I mean, think about the cognitive load you are managing. You are translating, formulating, self-correcting, and speaking all at the same time. A listener recognizes that tremendous effort.
So we need to switch the internal narrative.
Yes, from, I hope they don't catch my mistake, to, I am demonstrating impressive effort right now.
Yeah.
This reframing immediately reduces the perceived threat.
That perspective shift alone could be revolutionary. But there's a related external force that the sources pinpoint as a really severe confidence destroyer.
Yes.
Comparison.
The comparison trap. This is where we actively invite external fear into our own internal space.
How so?
Well, we look at a colleague who lived abroad for 5 years, or a classmate who started learning at age 3, and we use their advanced fluency as a stick to beat ourselves with.
Right. We're constantly comparing chapter 1 of our learning story, the awkward early days, to chapter 10 of someone else's mastery narrative.
It's fundamentally illogical, yet we do it all the time.
All the time.
And the data explicitly states that comparison actively creates fear. It has to.
Why?
Because it establishes an immediate, unattainable metric for success. If your internal benchmark is someone else's near-native fluency, you will always feel inadequate. That leads to fear, and fear leads to silence.
And it's so toxic because it shifts your focus away from your own progress.
Your measurable internal progress.
And onto these uncontrollable external metrics.
Exactly.
So the immediate response to spotting this comparison trap needs to be highly disciplined. What is the actionable takeaway here for our listener?
The core mandate is this. You must focus exclusively on your own journey and your own personal progress.
Your only valid metric for success is your own incremental growth.
Yes. Were you able to hold a conversation for 30 seconds longer today than you did last week? Did you finally use that difficult phrase you practiced?
Those are the only data points that actually matter.
The only ones.
So it demands a complete block on external comparison. Language learning is a deeply individual, messy process. It is not a race.
And it is certainly not a competition. If you find yourself comparing, you have to consciously redirect your focus back to your own documented small wins. We'll talk about those later.
Right.
Okay, so now we move from the external to the internal, the self-sabotage mechanisms.
Right.
And we start with the immense anxiety surrounding making mistakes. This fear is so strong, it often causes learners to stop speaking mid-sentence.
Prioritizing grammatical integrity over the actual flow of communication.
Yes.
And this anxiety is ingrained in us, isn't it? For so many of us, our language education was rooted in grading and correction. A mistake meant failure. It meant a lower score.
We were conditioned to fear the red pen,
We were.
and we need to chemically neutralize that conditioning. This is where the profound concept mistakes as data becomes central to our deep dive.
Okay.
The sources provide this beautiful reframing. Mistakes are not failures. They are necessary high-value tools for learning and feedback.
Let's delve into the mechanics of that. How exactly does making a mistake help the brain learn faster?
It's a neurological feedback loop. When you try to communicate a complex thought, your brain generates a prediction model for how the sentence should be structured.
Okay.
When you speak it incorrectly, the external world or even your own internal monitoring registers a failure of that prediction. That failure generates a strong signal, a feedback point.
A data point.
A data point that tells the brain exactly which synaptic connections need to be corrected and reinforced.
So without the attempt and the subsequent error, the brain never receives the necessary data to strengthen the correct pathway.
It doesn't.
If you only practice sentences you know are perfect, you never expand your capacity under pressure.
Exactly. Think of it less like a report card and more like an experiment. A failed experiment yields just as much valuable data as a successful one.
It tells you which variables to adjust next time.
Precisely. When you make an error, you're simply gathering data on your current fluency frontier. They are not signs of incompetence. They are proof of effort. They're the raw material for future learning.
And this idea directly challenges the internal tyrant of perfectionism, which is the next major barrier.
Yes.
We're aiming for fluency, and we must aggressively reject the goal of perfection.
And the sources are highly instructive on this point. They define fluency as flow, not perfection.
What does that mean exactly? Flow.
Fluency is the ability to maintain the conversation, to efficiently transmit meaning, and to understand and be understood without, undue hesitation.
And perfection is not required for any of that.
Not at all.
If the goal is clear, effective communication, then the standard is simply intelligibility, not flawless grammar.
Absolutely. The expectation of perfection is a trap that the learner sets for themselves. We have to normalize error.
That's a good point. Native speakers aren't perfect.
Not even close. Native speakers constantly use filler words. We stumble, we self-correct, we even butcher grammar in casual speech. If perfection isn't the standard for native speakers, why must it be the standard for the brave learner?
This leads us right into the most immediate consequence of this perfectionism, the perfect sentence trap. This is that cognitive jam where the learner stops speaking because they're trying to architect a flawless, complex thought in real time.
And this requires an immense expenditure of what we call cognitive load.
Okay, what's cognitive load?
It's the total amount of mental effort being used in your working memory. So when you are simultaneously monitoring pronunciation, vocabulary retrieval, complex grammar rules,
Then you're also battling social anxiety.
the cognitive load exceeds your capacity.
And the system crashes. The learner pauses, the silence gets longer, and the conversation moves on without them.
They have prioritized construction over communication flow.
But the reality of spoken English is that it's fast, it's responsive, and often it's highly simplified just to maintain momentum.
Yes. If you spend 5 seconds trying to construct a perfect conditional sentence, you've lost the flow. The goal must be flow over form.
So if we're battling this perfect sentence trap, we need a radical simplification of the goal.
We do.
Don't aim for the perfect sentence. The motivational aim must be reduced to something much smaller.
Aim only for the next sentence.
That's the breakthrough. Just articulate the next sequential thought.
Use the simplest possible structures if you have to. If the thought is simple, the cognitive load remains low, the production speed increases, and you maintain the flow.
By focusing only on the immediate next step, you starve the perfectionist critic of the long-term planning time it needs to activate that freeze response. Okay, let's discuss a common but really perplexing issue: the private versus public divide.
Yes.
We hear this all the time. I can write, I can read, I can even talk to myself in English perfectly, but the moment a real audience appears, I completely seize up.
This specific phenomenon provides the clearest diagnostic tool available.
How so?
If you can speak perfectly fine in private, your linguistic knowledge base is sufficient. The language is there. The moment the audience appears, and the ability vanishes.
It's a confidence problem.
It is fundamentally a confidence problem, not an English problem.
So the brain is calculating the potential social risk. When you're alone, the fear of judgment is 0. The safety level is 100%.
Right.
But as soon as a listener enters the room, that perceived risk skyrockets, flooding the system with anxiety.
So the goal, then, is not to learn more English. It's to slowly convince the brain that this social interaction is not, in fact, dangerous.
And you can't just switch on confidence. It's not a light switch.
You can't. Confidence is built incrementally through repeated, low-stakes exposure that proves to the primitive parts of your brain that the risk is manageable.
So we need a systematic strategy, something based on psychological desensitization.
We do. We need to create a kind of desensitization hierarchy, starting with the safest possible action and then gradually introducing more risk.
And the sources provide a clear 3-step method for expanding that comfort zone slowly and deliberately.
Yes. Step 1, talk to yourself. Self-dialoguing, this is the foundation.
Why start there?
Because it forces your production mechanisms to fire. You're articulating full sentences and complex thoughts without any external listener, without any critique.
The psychological benefit there seems profound. You're building muscle memory for speech production in a zero-stakes environment.
Exactly. You bypass the social fear center entirely, and you establish fluency within your own mind. You can debate, argue, narrate your entire day, just focusing purely on getting the words out.
Okay, so that's step 1. What's next?
Step 2, talk to a phone recorder. This is the first incremental step up the risk hierarchy.
So now you introduce the audible record of your voice.
You are externalizing your voice for the first time, forcing you to actually listen to your own output.
The challenge there is facing the self-judgment, isn't it? Many learners are shocked or even embarrassed when they first hear themselves speak English.
They are. This step forces you to confront that internal critic and just get used to the sound of your own voice. But the critical advantage is that you control everything. The playback, the volume, the audience, which is still just you.
And I suppose recording allows for crucial self-monitoring.
It does. You can check your own flow, spot recurring errors, and perhaps most importantly, you might realize how much clearer and more effective your communication is than you feared.
So it's a controlled exposure, a vital confidence boost.
Exactly. And that leads to step 3. Talk to one close friend.
Okay, so this is the first safe introduction of an external audience.
And the material emphasizes that this must be an impeccably safe listener, meaning someone who is fully supportive, who understands your journey, and crucially, will not correct you unless you ask them to. They're focused purely on maintaining the conversation flow with you.
So this introduces a tiny, manageable dose of social risk. You're practicing the give and take of real dialogue, but the stakes are minimal because the judgment level is 0.
And by successfully navigating these 3 steps, repeatedly, you expand the boundaries of your comfort zone. You're essentially retraining your brain to view speaking English as a low-risk, high-reward activity.
It's a structured exercise in exposure. You're providing empirical evidence to your nervous system that speaking English in public, when you do it carefully, is safe. And that slow, steady process leads to inevitable confidence growth.
That's the path. We've broken down the symptoms, the internal traps, the external pressures, but we need to return to the core mechanism.
The single question.
The single question that the brain asks that generates all this debilitating fear.
We identified it earlier, but it deserves a deep examination because it really is the root of everything. The foundational fear is, what if I look stupid?
Yes, this is the defense mechanism against perceived loss of social status. Every hesitation, every self-correction, every moment of silence is the brain attempting to protect you from the possibility of embarrassment.
So if the goal is absolute protection against looking stupid,
the only successful strategy the brain can deploy is silence and withdrawal.
But silence guarantees stasis. It guarantees that the language skill never converts into real fluency. This reveals the fundamental trade-off identified in the source material. Natural speaking requires risk.
It does.
You cannot be fluent if you are dedicating the vast majority of your cognitive energy to protecting yourself from potential embarrassment.
You must choose to prioritize expression over protection. Growth only happens outside the comfort zone.
Every time you accept the risk of a mispronunciation or a grammar error, you are making a positive deposit into your fluency account.
The mistake is the price of the ticket to fluency. You have to be willing to pay it.
So, recognizing the necessity of risk, we can move to the antidote. The sources provided an incredibly potent, practical 8-point plan, a kind of cognitive manifesto.
Yes.
Designed to systematically dismantle this psychological block. This is where we shift from analysis to aggressive action.
Okay. Point 1. Speak without preparing. This is a direct attack on the perfectionist and the cognitive load trap.
We have to prioritize immediate action. If you give yourself a full minute to mentally construct the sentence, the fear circuit has time to activate. The perfectionist demands optimization.
But if you force immediate action, say the first simple thought that comes to mind, you bypass that deliberation and you maintain the flow. It's about speed and spontaneity over structure.
Okay, that's number 1.
Point 2. Use simple sentences. This is a deliberate reduction of the cognitive load.
Don't try to impress anyone with highly complex syntax when you are nervous.
Please don't. Stick to basic subject-verb-object structures. Why? Because the fewer variables you try to manage, the fewer rules you have to monitor, the faster your production speed.
Fluency is flow, and flow is accelerated by simplification.
Right. Point 3. Record yourself daily. This builds self-awareness and accountability. It moves the internal critic outside the main conversational loop.
And this practice shouldn't be a critique session, should it?
No, it should be an observation session. Listen for momentum. Are you getting better at speaking without those long, paralyzing pauses?
And the act of recording and listening desensitizes you to the sound of your own voice. It neutralizes that shock factor that often prevents us from speaking out loud.
Very true. Point 4. Celebrate small wins. This is essential for reinforcing positive behavior. The brain needs positive feedback.
So you must actively recognize and acknowledge moments of success. Did you use a new idiom correctly today? Did you manage to articulate a complex thought, even if the ending was a little messy?
Yes. Those small victories must be internally logged and celebrated. This positive reinforcement encourages the brain to repeat the risky behavior, slowly overriding the fear response with the reward system.
I love that. Okay, what's next?
Point 5. Stop judging your accent. Focus aggressively on intelligibility, not on native-like mimicry.
This is a huge source of anxiety for so many.
A massive source. Your accent is a part of your identity and your heritage. If a listener can understand the message, your accent is functionally perfect.
Trying to erase years of phonetic development to achieve a specific native sound is often an unnecessary hurdle that only generates huge amounts of anxiety and hesitation.
It does. Focus on clear articulation, not acoustic perfection. Okay, point 6. Speak even if you are nervous. This is about emotional acceptance. It's about decoupling action from emotion.
Nervousness is inevitable when you're taking a risk, so the goal is not to wait until the fear disappears.
It never will completely.
But to speak alongside the nervousness, acknowledge the fear. Okay, I am nervous right now, but I am speaking anyway.
That technique proves to your internal system that nervousness is simply an uncomfortable passenger, but it is not the driver of your behavior.
Okay, point 7.
Point 7. Treat mistakes like a part of the learning journey. This is putting the data reframing idea into practice.
So when an error occurs, do not emotionally punish yourself. Instead, reframe it instantly.
Thank you, brain, for the feedback. That was a useful data point.
But this conscious shift prevents the error from triggering the internal critic and the subsequent freeze. Errors become tools for rapid growth.
And the forces suggest that the fastest learners are not those who make the fewest mistakes, but those who are the most willing to make them.
Okay, and the final point.
Point 8. Find a supportive speaking partner. This is the vital social infrastructure.
And this is distinct from the close friend we mentioned earlier.
It is. This person or group should be focused on mutual progress, where the goal is flow and continuous effort, not correction. They provide a high-trust, low-stakes environment.
Mimicking the psychological safety needed to practice the risky behavior of spontaneous speech.
Exactly. And the final, overarching mantra that binds this entire 8-point antidote together is the non-negotiable truth from the research. Confidence follows action.
This is the ultimate flip of the script, isn't it? Learners often wait for confidence to appear. They think, once I feel confident, then I will start speaking.
But the research proves this is completely backwards. Confidence is a consequence. It's a result of having successfully executed a risky action.
So if you wait for the feeling of confidence, you will wait forever.
Forever. The strategy is simple, though difficult to execute at first. You must speak first, and the confidence will follow as a natural dividend of your successful communication attempts.
Every utterance, no matter how small or imperfect, deposits psychological capital into your confidence account.
That's the way. Hashtag tag outro.
We have spent this time peeling back the layers on the real barrier to fluency. And it's clear the psychological fortress of fear is far more challenging than any grammar rule.
It really is. But the good news is that fear is entirely manageable when you understand its mechanics.
So just to recap for everyone listening, what's the most important thing to remember?
Remember, feeling fear is a normal part of the process. The key is understanding that your linguistic ability is likely sufficient already.
Right.
The core issue is your psychological response to risk and judgment. By aggressively reframing mistakes as data points, normalizing your accent, and realizing that your effort is admired far more than your errors are scrutinized.
You neutralize the grip of fear.
You do.
Your mission for the coming week, then, derived directly from the core insights of this deep dive, is simple but challenging. Internalize the promise to prioritize expression over perfection.
Get the message out, even if it is messy.
Take the risk. Don't wait for the perfect moment or the perfect sentence.
Just speak the next sentence. Do not let the pursuit of perfection prevent necessary progress.
No fear, no perfection, just expression.
That's it for this deep dive. If this detailed analysis helped you understand the psychological chains that might be blocking your voice, please do make sure to like, subscribe, and share this with others who might be freezing on their path to fluency.
We really appreciate your support, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.